I want to go into some more traditional stuff about transgenderism. And I've had this argument with my friend many times about this show, The Last of Us. So The Last of Us stars this guy named Pedro Pascal. And what they did is they took The Last of Us comes from a game, and they took a part of the game where there was this guy who was assumed to be gay. There's a character in the game that was assumed to be gay. He mentions a guy, and they ask him, "Did you used to be married to this guy, or did you live with this guy?" And he says like he used to, or something like that. And it was like one scene in one game where it was assumed that this guy was gay. So they took that scene, they made a whole story arc about it in the show, which is based off this game. And it was the Parks and Rec guy with the beard, Ron something. I don't remember his name. They made this whole episode for it. They made an entire episode about this gay couple that was only alluded to in the game. But as you will, right? People were like, what the hell is this? You basically made up 99% of what's happening here. He came out, called the whole fan base homophobic, right? If you have a problem with that. I told my friend about this who liked the show. He said it's just how it is. It's just how they wrote it, and I was like, they are purposely writing things in and purposely selecting actors who will go along with this stuff. And this was further exacerbated by the star of the show, and we'll look this up for you in a second. The star of the show is like a teenage girl who believes she's a boy or non-binary. And all of these things, all these people are not just pushing these things because they believe in human rights or, all trans lives are human lives, whatever they say, whatever bullshit they do. Bella Ramsey is this girl's name. And the show is basically transgender propaganda. So we've got this girl they hired to be the star of this show, and she believes she's non-binary or whatever, so she's a girl that's going around portraying herself as androgynous, and this is a teenage girl, of course, so that's sick, and the fact that it's perpetuated is weird and creepy. Nick Offerman is who I'm talking about. So they got Nick Offerman to come on, because they like guys who pretend that they're super manly. They got him to come on and play this gay character that was super forced. They made up 99% of it. They made up this gay storyline that was barely in the video game at all. They pushed that. And then he gets mad when people have a problem with it because it has nothing to do with the game or the real story, right? Then they push out this Bella Ramsey girl who believes she's non-binary and all this stuff, and this Pedro Pascal guy comes onto the show, and he defends her because everybody's like, this is weird that a child is non-binary. And then what does Pedro Pascal have? Well, of course, he's sacrificing, allegedly, Your Honor, but he's got this brother who also pretends that he's a woman. And this isn't a guy He looks pretty young. Let's give him that, right? He's got all this plastic surgery. He looks pretty young. But he's actually in his late 30s, and he is an actor, too. What a surprise. And he's Pedro Pascal's younger sister, as they say in People, who's an actor and who grew up in Chile, of course, and born in 1992. So the person's 33 years old. All of a sudden, they were transgender in their 30s in 2021. So 30 years old, all of a sudden, we're transgender right around this time where the show's coming out. Pedro Pascal supports it. And what do you know? He's also a staunch critic of J.K. Rowling, who is against men being, or transgender women being in women's sports and in women's spaces, and he called her a heinous loser because she stands up for actual women. So my point is that we can get so far down the road where people will believe, all of this stuff is a coincidence, but The Last of Us is actually just literally propaganda. They took a show that was very popular, they found a sliver in it, just a sliver in it, to make an entire story arc about homosexuality. And I'm not just going to sit here and be like, oh, everything with a gay man in it is completely bad, but they purposely put this in out of nowhere. And then they have a girl who's allegedly non-binary, Then they have the main star who's playing her father has some sort of weird like support for this sort of thing. And then it turns out that he has a brother who is transgender, and he also criticizes people who are pro keeping men out of women's sports. And it's like you couldn't have concocted more of a scenario here where you're pushing a certain agenda. And that's all I want to say about that, is that these people they're not just good people. They're not just coming out in defense of this community or this section of the population that's extremely vulnerable and oppressed. These are people who are pushing this for their own weird belief system. You know, you don't just happen to have a transgender brother and then have be in a show where the co-star believes she's a woman or believes she's non-binary, and then also they create a gay story arc out of nowhere. Like, this isn't just a coincidence. Somebody has to sit there and write this. Somebody has to cast these people. This doesn't just happen. This isn't just how the story goes. And if you want more examples of this, I thought of this, okay?